Hello and welcome to more ReZero stuff. Today we are going to be talking about a popular theory that popped up around the time of Emilia finishing the third trial, and that is that Minerva might be Emilia's actual mom. Now, in typical ReZero fashion, there's not a lot of info, so there's going to be a lot of conjecture and inferences made, so don't expect an actual definite answer by the end of this video. I did do some research, but now I'm kind of doing this for memory, so I'm hoping that I remember everything. If I forget anything, leave a comment, but hopefully I cover most of it. Okay, before we actually get into the theory, I do want to lay a bit of groundwork and talk about what we do know. So we know that Emilia's parent, Emilia is a half elf, which means that either her one parent's an elf, one parent is a human, or it means I guess they both could be half elves, and that would work out. Given that we know that her dad is not Emilia, Fortuna's older brother, I think that's kind of leaning towards her dad being an elf and her mom being a human. And we also have a a tweet, that's what I was thinking, a tweet from Tope himself who says that her mom is human. And I'll actually see if I can find that again, because I know I've read it before, but it's been a while. So if I can find it online, I'll post it here so that you can see it. And because of her dad's side of the genes, we know that Emilia gets her hair color and her eye color from her dad, which does mean that her mom doesn't have silver hair or amethyst colored eyes, but she does get her more rounded and soft features from her mom. So her mom is going to be someone who doesn't have silver hair, doesn't have amethyst eyes, and has more soft features. We also know that Emilia's mom is close to elves, or at the very least the elves that are in Elior Forest where Emilia is growing up. We know from a few different versions that Echidna, Minerva, and I think Segment have both outright stated that they do know Emilia's mom, which already kind of calls into question how this is all going to work, considering if her mom is a human, then how was she alive 400 years ago when the witches were alive? But that I'm putting all of that aside for now, just so we're all on the same page. I think there are ways around that issue, but I also think that it's not super important. Actually, I feel like I might need to explain this. Actually, I've thought about it a little more, and I think that's going to be well outside the scope of this theory. So let's assume that there is some possible way for Emilia's mom to both know the witches that were alive 400 years ago and also have Emilia. Because we don't know when Emilia was actually born. All we really know is that she was young 100 years ago. And more than likely, either Emilia's mom has somehow found a way to have a long, long, long life, or some timey-wimey stuff is happening. There's not enough info to go off of on this as of right now that I have looked up, because I have not looked up much on that just yet. But so we'll assume that that's possible, and we're gonna move on. So another thing that we kind of know, everyone reacts as if it's true, so I think it's true, that Emilia is the daughter of a witch, and that narrows it down a lot. Uh, there's not We know of the seven deadly sins, the witches that were alive 400 years ago. There's been a few more since then. Pandora is called a witch. Emilia has been called a witch. There's, I think, one or two other ones, but we're narrowing it down to the ones that were alive 400 years ago, since the witches knew about her then. So I'm going to narrow it down to those seven, and we're going to go from there. So, of the seven witches that we know about from the dream world, there are two of them that we can just outright throw out as a no. That is Satella, who is a half elf, and she has silver hair, amethyst eyes. She basically looks like Emilia. And because of that, I think there's enough info that we've gotten from everyone else that it can't be her. That doesn't match the description at all. The other person that we can throw out is Segment. Segment is actually a giant. She's a very small giant. But that does mean that she is not human. She cannot be related to Emilia. Which brings us down to five people. And of those five, Minerva is the best option, or the most likely option, I guess. According to the wiki, she did die because of elves, because someone used them as bait to lure her into a trap, which doesn't exactly like 100% pin the elves at Elior Forest on her or like say that they have a connection, but it does. She is the only one that's explicitly said to have a connection with the elves. So that's a little bit of a red thread there. Minerva does have blonde hair, blue eyes, soft facial features, so she does fit that part of the description of what we've heard. But the other witches kind of do too. Well, Typhon has, as a child, Daphne is pretty much a child too. She's like early teens, so I think both of those can be thrown out of this. Which just leaves us with the three: Minerva, Echidna, and Carmela. Wait, is that her name? Yes. So we're down to three now. But anyway, this video is about Minerva. um, the most people have said that Minerva is the best candidate because of how she acts during the third trial. She does try to hide her face. She does try to, or she pulls in Emilia for a hug and like pats her head and acts very motherly towards her. But I just don't see it all that well. Like I understand why people see how she was reacting and understand and think that there's more there. And I do think there's more there, but I can also see it just being that Minerva was friends with Emilia's mom, and this is kind of like a aunt type thing rather than a mother connection. So while I don't know if either of those cases are true, I think there is enough for either side that I can't go with either one completely. So I can't say that Emilia is, or that Minerva is doing what she's doing because she's her actual mom or because she is just a close family friend. And that also lines up with the web novel version of it, because in the web novel, she doesn't show up for the third trial, Segment does. But as soon as Emilia hears Minerva's name, she kind of has a feeling of nostalgia, basically, thinking about it, thinking about her name, which, again, I think could go either way. I think it could go that she remembers the name because it's her mom, or it could just be that she was around her whenever she was little and there is just a family connection there. And this is my big problem with this theory, is that I just don't think we have enough information to say one way or another. I'm not going to throw out the theory and say that it's impossible. I just think it might be a little bit of a stretch at the moment. There is one more thing that I want to throw in here. It's not really much in the way of evidence, but it does make a connection that I think should be pointed out. If you haven't, this is going to be a little spoilery. So if you haven't read the fifth arc or haven't seen the third season of the anime, then just go ahead and end the video here. I'm not going to add much after this. But in the fifth arc, we learn that Sirius is the person who has the authority of wrath. There we go. I'll get it out eventually. And the big theory about that I think is pretty much almost certainly true is that Sirius is Fortuna. And a point that I have seen on Reddit is that it would be a nice little motif to have Emilia's mom and her adopted mom both have the authority of wrath. And while I think that's another thing that I think is a stretch, I can also see Tope doing this. I could 100% see him wanting that to be a little like connection there made. So I don't think that's evidence. I don't think that's enough to move any needles, but at the same time I do think it's something that's worth pointing out. Now, personally, I don't think any of the witches are actually Emilia's mom. I don't think Emilia's mom is going to show up at all in the story, but again, I could very, very easily be wrong on that. If there is one thing that I have learned from Tope is that there's always going to be more. More that he has not said that he's going to throw in at the last minute to completely change your perspective on an event. And I think that's what's going to end up happening with Emilia's mom. I think that we are not going to get a whole lot of information, and I don't think the theories that are out there on who her mom is are going to amount to anything, because I think he's just going to end up saying what actually happens by the end of the story, and by that point, it's not going to be anything that's been stated yet. I think some other stuff is happening, but again, that's not what this video is about. So that is, again, there's not a lot of info for us to go off of. So a lot of the theory is just basing off vibes. I don't really have a better way of saying it. But if I've gotten anything wrong in here, please let me know, because I would rather be corrected than continue to be wrong. Anyway, that is it. See ya.